I just brought up this topic with my father because another one of the many laws in the United States, and in particular the laws of the state of New York as it relates to women. So, through my military enlistment in the United States Air Force, I was living, I got the learning opportunity, if you will, on the real essence of marriage, even if the marriage was never true to begin with. And so for 17 years out of my life, not that I ever blame my children for this, I would never blame them for this, because they are innocent parties up until the point they were able to make decisions on their own. And at that point, those decisions all by themselves carved out wayward motion on all their ends. Because you have to be cognizant of the road, okay? You have to be cognizant of the road that you have already traveled on, the road that you're standing on, and the road that you are about to embark upon. Of course, they never listened to any of the things that I had to say, but had they listened to me in some level of some degree, things might have been much, much different than they are today. But at the point in the junction that I realized through communication that was coming through to me by Todd DeBisi. I didn't know him at the time. I was just getting these random phone calls. And when I finally connected to him and he explained to me that his wife, who worked at the United States Post Office in Henrietta, New York, was having an affair with the man that was living in my house, Jeff Truax. I don't really like, since I didn't know him, I didn't want to take that for face value without seeing for myself. So after I saw that what he told me was true, I started to conduct my own observation of things in my household, and I found out that Jeff Truax, when I wasn't around, because I did show up on a couple occasions when he thought I wasn't there, and I observed where he was allowing Patty DeBisi to not only go through my personal belongings, but almost like being on a shopping spree. She got to take whatever she wanted from me. And so I did call the police and I did ask the question, can I have her arrested for taking my things? And they said no. And I said, and why is that? And that is because at that point in time, the house was jointly owned by me and Jeff. And because he brought her to my house and allowed her to enter the house and allowed her to take whatever she wanted out of the house and then brought her back to wherever he picked her up from. It doesn't fit within the realm of the law as far as burglary or theft of any sorts. So I had no recourse to that. And so the only way that I could pay her back, you know, based on that communication is if I, engaged in a relationship with her husband and gained entrance to her house, and he allowed me to take her stuff. And I wasn't really willing to do that because that's just not my mode of operation. I'm not going to just go sleep with some random guy in a payback mode to do the same shady shit that she did to me and my kids. But because she was a Postal employee and they had met on the job, and they were both co-workers in the same facility, and they were able to coordinate entrance into the house at the same time and, allow that type of behavior to occur, and he allowed it, there's really nothing that you can do from that point forward other than make some major attempt to remove yourself from the overall situation. And that's when the divorce proceedings began to occur. Now, those happened rather quickly, I might say, and they ended up living in my old house, which happened to be the family house of my children, and we were locked out so that we couldn't, I had to ask permission once they began to occupy the home together to go up and get my things. And so on one visitation, my kids went there and she took my personal belongings in front of my kids. They told me this, and took my personal things out into the backyard to a burn pit and set them on fire. And I'll never forget the day they came back from that visitation, because they were all upset and they were crying, and my son was so upset that he was throwing up, and he just was physically sick from the whole thing, that they did that right in front of them. That is abuse. The state of New York does not recognize that as any type of abuse. And I'm sure she ended up with all my personal belongings and was able to orchestrate a lot of the madness that occurred in our lives, because she's a postal employee, and that's, they're federally vested to do whatever the fuck they want. And so if I could render any type of advice to anybody, particularly the way the United States operates with women's rights, because women have the right to enter other women's homes by gaining access through the man in the home, and they have the right to take whatever they want out of that home, and it can never be categorized as theft. I would avoid all men if I was a woman, and I would never get married if I was either a man or a woman.